I reckon today's the day. Welcome to the first official episode of the I Reckon podcast.
I reckon we're live.
Hello, Dad.
Hello, Jizz.
The back-to-back Fallujah champ himself joins us today on our first official episode of the I Reckon podcast. I came up with this idea like a week ago, and here we are. And why I came up with this idea is my mom has always said, your dad needs to have a radio show. And she was saying that in reference to you and Jonathan Borden, who I'm sure we'll talk about and hopefully have on one day. John, if you're out there. And mostly it's because she thinks you're funny. I think most people think you're funny. And then, you retired from the Army.
I did.
Yep. You worked a little gig.
I did.
Yep.
Did some contracting for a year.
There you go. And then now you're working for the Army again as a civilian.
I am.
But the end is nigh, ladies and gentlemen. And I was wondering, I was like, what is Dad going to do when he's done? Because I had the same thought when you were retiring from the Army. I was like, how old were you when you retired from the Army?
Oh, let's see. I've been about 50, 49, 50, I guess, 49.
Young.
Yeah,
really young. And so you found something to do, which is great. But then, when you retire again from the next gig, you still won't be 65.
No, I won't. If I'm working at 65, something's going sideways.
Yeah.
When I got out of the Army, I'd done that for 28 years, and I loved almost all of it. And then I get out, and the one thing I did not think I wanted to do was go back to work for the Army as a civilian, doing the same thing that I've been doing for the last 28 years. That just did not sound appealing to me. So I got out. I did the contracting gig for a year. That was good. It was kind of a weird transition. I went from an organization that doesn't really care how much money they make or they don't really care about anything but getting the mission done. Mm-hmm. And that was a mindset that I had lived with my entire adult life. And then I get out to a government contractor, and I get on board, and I see ways that we could be more efficient. I see ways that we could improve our product to the customer, the government. Mm-hmm. That's I learned in the contracting world, that's who the customer is. But there was no appetite to make those changes, or there was no appetite to make any improvements unless it improved the bottom line for the company. Yeah. What I mean is, if it made the company more money, it would be considered. If it made the government or the customer's job easier or more efficient, it wasn't going to be talked about.
That wasn't good enough on its own.
So that was really counterintuitive to what I had been doing for 28 years, which was find a way to make it better, find a way to make it more efficient, find a way to better take care of your people, to allow them to better accomplish the mission. So I was a little frustrated, and I started looking around, and a mentor of mine was working in a organization on Fort Bragg, and there was an opening, and I saw the opening on USA Jobs, the government website, for employment, and I called my mentor and I said, "Hey, is this position working with you?" And he goes, "Yes, it is." He goes, "Are you interested?" And I said, "Well, I think I am. I've been doing this contracting thing, and it's not really sitting right with me." And he goes, "Well, hey, man, shoot me a copy of your resume. Put your application into USA Jobs, and we'll see how it goes." Well, the bottom line is I went went to work doing for the government essentially the same thing that I spent 28 years preparing to do. And once I got in there, it was like putting on a comfortable sweatshirt. The people I work with, I had previous relationships with, a lot of them from being assigned here at Fort Bragg, and then others I had been to school with, a couple I had been to the Sergeants Majors Academy with, and it was like putting on the comfortable sweatshirt. It was the language I understood, the attitude I understood, the mission first, people always mindset was resonant in the organization, still is in the organization that I work for, and it really surprised me. I mean, it really surprised me because I did not think for a second when I was transitioning that that would be where I would end up, and I
Yeah.
would be as happy and fulfilled as I am. I feel like even as a civilian, I feel like me and my team make a difference every day. I feel like that we're still enabling the pointy end of the spear to be the pointy end of the spear, and it's just I get a lot of satisfaction out of it. Now, don't get me wrong, and I know the behind the scenes story of Doge and Dad through the soap business, and I'm not opposed to that. I'm really not opposed to that. But no, it's been post retirement. It's surprisingly been an easier transition maybe than I thought. But I think that's got everything to do with where I'm working and what we're responsible for. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
That's kind of it.
Yeah, and all of that plays into kind of why I asked you to do this with me.
Mm-hmm.
The big one is, I mean, we hang out with your Army friends all the time, past and present Army friends.
Yeah.
And a consistent theme is how much you've had to offer them over time. Some of these people were privates when you were a platoon sergeant, and we're still family friends to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you don't just get that by being assigned somebody's platoon sergeant. You know what I mean? Like, that's earned. And then you talking about like continuing to work with soldiers, to work with your people, continuing to have a mission being so important in your post-retirement from the military life. I think this is a great avenue to continue that. And we can only, our sphere of influence is small, the number of people we interact with day to day. The cool thing about podcasting is that we get to reach so many other people, and I think you have a lot to offer, and I don't want to keep you to ourselves. And I want to put you out there to the world. And so that was a big reason why. And then the other reason why, selfishly, is when I'm 80 years old and I'm a empty nester, all alone, hopefully Jordan's still around, it'll be really nice to turn this on and sit down and have a conversation with my dad again.
I was very extroverted in the Army. I think you have to be as a leader. I think you have to put yourself on the X, and you have to be in front of your people, and you have to communicate with them effectively. I was a little hesitant when you first approached me with the idea of doing this, because for a couple of different reasons. One, your idea was, there's a lot of people out there who have worked with you in the past, and they want to hear what you're up to, and see what your perspectives are on certain things and certain issues. And I didn't want to disappoint anybody, because I've been I've been retired 5-6 years now, and I'm not the same person that I was when I was in, and I think that's for the better, right? I mean, I feel like I did a really good job of closing that chapter of my life and opening another one. I think I was ready to do that. So I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit hesitant to do that, because, when you're in a leadership position, your audience is always captive, right? I mean, they're always there. You got them Friday afternoon for 30 minutes, whether they like it or not, right? So you can kind of put some thoughts in their mind. Hopefully they pick up just a sliver of it. But doing this, I didn't think anybody would care. I was still not sure anybody would. But what really sold me on it was the fact that you said, when I'm older, and you're gone, I'll have the ability to sit down and reflect on the conversations we had. And that hooked me, man. That hooked me so hard, because I'll be honest with you, and I know I'm rambling, I'm all over. I promise this will get better as we go on. But for the better part of the tail end of my career, after you and your brothers were born, I was gone a lot. And I did not have with you or with them what you would consider a traditional relationship. I'm in and out of the country. We're at different installations. We're doing different things. And it wasn't the kind of relationship that I had with my mom and dad. And in some ways, I feel like I cheated you guys out of that. And I carried a little bit of guilt with that because I wasn't there the way that my parents were there for me. And I think the way my parents were there for me and the examples they set was really it was a catalyst and a foundation that allowed me to be, if I was successful in the Army, it goes back to how I was raised. And I feel like I may have gypped you and your brothers out of that a little bit. So it's very important to me now, to maintain the relationship, not the way it would have been then, because we're too far past that, but the relationship that we have is as adults now, and so that was really the tipping point when you framed it out that I'll have conversations of me and you sitting down and talking about things. I couldn't say no at that point.
Yeah,
so.
that would have been really weird if you would have said no.
No, I couldn't. No, I didn't have the ability. So
I was talking to some of my friends from the Army who are still in the area, telling them about the podcast, and they were like, that is so cool, because their dads, they're particularly girl dads.
Yeah.
And they're going through right now what you went through, being gone a lot, having to choose.
Yeah.
I don't believe you can have it all the time. So I don't think there's such a thing as balance. You just make choices. It's a series of choices.
It is.
And they're like, man, I hope I have that with my daughter when she's older, because right now I'm having to make some tough choices. And I'm like, don't worry about it. You'll be fine.
You'll evolve. It does take, I will tell you, it'll take a little effort. And, it's, but I'll say it. I'm extremely happy with where our relationship is right now. I feel closer to you now than probably any time, except where you were probably your son's age, when you were 2. I was around a little bit then. Of course, before the GWAT, kind of took over.
Yeah.
So, I cherish, your family being so close to Alana and I, and the fact that we're able to spend time together and have the relationship that we do. You guys don't know, but every morning on the way to work, I call and talk to Jess almost every morning, unless it's an early morning or I got a meeting first thing. And we spend 20 to 30 minutes on the phone, talking about her business, talking about the grandkid, talking about current events, and what's going on in our lives. And, one, it makes my trip into work a whole lot shorter. And, I don't take for granted those times. And now, she's pretty smart, so it also gives me something to think about during the day. When she checks me on some things and kind of questions my position or opinion. And I cherish those conversations that we have most mornings on my way to work.
Yeah, it is really cool. And that was another thing that made the idea of starting this really easy, because I'm like, we do this every single day.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do it twice a day. Sometimes he calls me on the way in and on the way out of work.
Yeah.
It's truly remarkable. And what I want to do now is, I know you as dad.
Mm-hmm.
I know you as a new granddad.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about Jeffrey as a child.
Oh.
And I'm really interested in that. And I think as the episodes go on, like, we will get into more of, like, the 28-year chunk of your life.
Yeah.
And then things after that and what you think about stuff going on now. But I think it makes sense to start off talking about who was Jeffrey as a kid. And I want you to start telling us 2 things. What was your house like growing up?
Okay.
And you mentioned your success in the Army goes back to kind of being raised right. What does being raised right mean to you now?
Okay. Well, I started out as a child.
Yes.
I am squarely in what the cool kids call Generation X.
Yep.
I was born in 1970. I'm from Alabama. Grew up, went to high school, moved around quite a bit in the state. I'm giving you some background now, so because this kind of shapes it out. My dad was your granddad was a state trooper in Alabama for 24, 25 years.
Wow.
We lived in different places in the state. We moved about as regularly as a military family would move. It was required for him to progress in his job. Born in Huntsville, grew up, well, lived there for 3 years. We moved to Jasper, Alabama, and then we moved to Montgomery, Alabama, and then we moved to Hamilton, Alabama, which is where we were living when, or where my parents, we were living when I graduated high school, and then my mom and dad kind of stayed there until Dad retired, and then they moved back up to Huntsville. So growing up, the most formative years, I would say, were around Montgomery in a town called Prattville. And we lived just north of Prattville. Mom and Dad bought 10 acres of land. We were in a mobile home at the time and moved the mobile home out there. We were living in a trailer park in town. They bought the land. We moved the mobile home out there, and that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And I say that for a lot of reasons. One, it got me out of a trailer park, which
it's always a good thing.
If you stereotyped a trailer park in Central Alabama in 1980, we probably checked every box with that. So I got out and lived. Couldn't see our nearest neighbor. I lived on a dirt road. It took us 30, 45 minutes to get to school. When I tell you, the old cliche about, I walked to school uphill both ways.
Yeah.
No, I didn't walk to school, but I walked to the bus stop. The bus didn't even come by our house. It was a quarter-mile walk from our front door to where the road split, and that's where the bus headed back towards the school. I was at the end of the bus loop. And so my sister and I, we walked every morning down there and then turned around and walked back. So to say we lived in rural Alabama would probably be an understatement. But what it did was it introduced me to nature. My dad introduced me to nature. It introduced me to the woods. It introduced me to what it would take to be self-sufficient and self-sustaining. We were on what eventually turned into a small farm. I grew up with horses and chickens and pigs and dogs and cats. We had at least 2 gardens, probably spanning an acre and a half. So everything, a lot of stuff that we ate and a lot of the things that we did went to, kind of sustain ourselves. That was how my dad was raised, and thankfully he passed that on to us, to my sister and I. And so, always had a sense of responsibility because we did live on that farm. Before I went to school in the morning, there were things I would have to do. There were animals that would have to be fed and watered. And then when I got home, first thing when I got home in the afternoon was schoolwork. Schoolwork came first. Homework came first. And then when homework was done, then chores came. The afternoon feeding of the animals, the afternoon watering of the animals, anything that needed to be done in the garden, whether it was pulling weeds or picking beans or, whatever it was. And so those things kind of were ingrained or inculcated in me early. You take care of what your responsibilities are first, and then if there's any time after those, then it's for yourself, right? Just like being a leader in the Army, right? You take care of your equipment, your personnel first, and then any time left over at the very end goes for you. So, and my dad was not in the Army. I mean, kind of a paramilitary organization, the Alabama State Troopers, but those lessons that he taught me, and the priorities of work and the priorities of life that he taught me as I was growing up were already very familiar to me when I became a soldier, and especially when I became a leader. So I spent a lot of time in the woods growing up. I spent a lot of time hunting, a lot of time fishing. My dad taught me responsibilities with firearms at an early age, and I think that's extremely important. The biggest lesson, or one of the first lessons that I can remember that he taught me was, a firearm's a tool. No different than any other tool, no different than a hammer, no different than a knife, no different than a screwdriver. It has a purpose, and it in itself is inanimate, and it only does what a human or a person manipulates it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that he taught me as far as safety and treating every gun like it was loaded from a very early age. Again, just transitioned naturally to me coming in the Army and being a soldier. The first time I went hunting solo by myself, I was probably 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he gave me one shell. It was a 20 gauge single shot shotgun. And I got one shell. And he was up when I left. And, it was 10 acres of land, and he would hear the rifle or the shotgun shot, and then he would be on the back porch waiting for me to come back because he knew I only had one shell, right? And one of the most horrible experiences ever was coming back empty-handed, right? But everything was a lesson with your granddad. You got one shot. You had to make it count. It made you be patient,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then also, we grew up watching a lot of Westerns, and this thing was, if you fired more than once, an adversary would know exactly where you were, so you only fire once, right? You don't want anybody zoning in on you. But more than anything else, it taught me to be patient. It taught me to be very selective. When it came to taking a shot, to harvesting an animal, because, again, the worst thing was coming across the backfield with him on the back porch and my pockets empty.
Yeah.
I
can imagine. I would not.
Then I had to go back and replay the whole thing, and he goes, okay, what did you learn? We AAR'd everything. So.
Yeah.
But those are and my mom. Oh yeah, I talked a lot about my dad, but my mom. I think like any boy growing up, your mom has a special place in your heart. And my mom was a homemaker.
Mm-hmm.
She was very supportive of my dad. She raised my sister and I. She did odd knick-knack jobs, when we were a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, she was stay-at-home mom, right? And very influential in my life. Ran a lot of interference between me and your grandfather when I got into adolescence, and was always my biggest fan. Always had my back. Was always very supportive. Mom and dad were married. I'd have to do the math. They had been married 3 years when I was born, and they're gone now. So, I don't know. They were married over 30 years.
The whole time.
They were
married the whole time.
That's it. That's what I'm trying to say. They were married the whole time.
They
right?
did it. Yes.
And seeing their relationship, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was good all the time. It was a good relationship. My dad's job was very demanding. It was very high stress. And mom acknowledged that and supported him. But I mean, they had their problems, their issues. But what was good about that was they showed me, they instilled in me the fact that, you stick with it. You don't quit. You don't give up. You work around those things. That lesson didn't sit all the way originally, but I absolutely
had to marinate a little bit.
Absolutely have it now,
time.
Right? So
yeah.
So those are the things I think that kind of shaped me. The big thing was them buying that land and moving me out of the city and letting me grow up in the country, and we lived there for 5 or 6 years. By the time I was a freshman in high school. When we moved to Hamilton, Alabama, where I first met your mom,
yes.
as a matter of fact. So, so the formative, what I would consider the formative years of my life were spent on a small farm in central Alabama and doing everything that went along with that,
That's awesome. So what I think is really cool about Mama and Granddad's relationship, that's what I called his parents, Mama and Granddad, is looking back on it now, they just, please hold. If you hear anything in the background, the baby is pushing a furniture dolly. We're going to let sleeping dogs lie with that one. But they chose each other every single day.
Yeah,
and I think that's really beautiful. And, you know, when I was a kid, I think eventually I did learn that like Mama and Granddad's relationship was not perfect.
No.
But when I was a kid, I would not have known that.
No, you wouldn't. You really wouldn't.
Yeah. And I think it's even more valuable now knowing that it wasn't perfect, because now I know every single day, every single wonderful, magical Christmas I experienced, every single wonderful, magical family reunion was a choice. Mm-hmm. And I bring that forward in my marriage now. I mean, it's a choice every single day. And someday the choice is easy, doesn't even feel like a choice.
Yeah.
And other days, like, it's a choice, like it's hard.
It's a tough one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like you are aware of the choice you're making every single day, you know? So I think that's really magical. Now, what are some of the things that you remember from your grandparents that you try to pull forward now that you're a granddad?
From my grandparents?
Yes.
Wow.
Granny Maddox is the only one I have a memory of.
Well, that's my dad's mom. Mm-hmm. My grandfather passed away when my dad was 3 years old. So my dad was raised by my grandmother on that side. She was a school teacher. She was very strict with him. I got away with murder, but she was very strict with my dad. You know, because he was the youngest of. Okay.
I'm just gonna.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how you get any guy to do what you want him to do. You got to make it feel like his idea. So.
Okay, we're back.
All right. So we're talking about my grandmother raising my dad. She's very strict. She was a school teacher. Worked her entire life. Very independent Southern lady. The thing that I remember most, I think that, you know, she the way she was impactful was, you know, she started a lot of the family traditions that went into our house. A big celebration on Thanksgiving. I think, like most Southern families, recipes were very important.
Yes.
She was an amazing cook. She made the best peach cobbler I've ever, to this day, ever put in my mouth. I have the recipe that she left, but I cannot replicate it. I'm not saying that she held something out.
She 100%.
But, you know, and she never measured anything, right? I mean, everything was put together, you know, through the palm of her hand. She knew how much a tablespoon was. She knew how much a teaspoon was. She knew exactly to the grain, I think, what a dash was. And, you know, I never saw her put a spoon in anything, never saw her pour anything in a measuring cup, but one of the best cooks I've ever sampled. So I think it was that and her desire. I think this was partially, and you're asking me things that I haven't really thought of in quite this context. But I think one of the things that she made important was knowing your family, knowing not just your immediate family, but your extended relatives. And I think being a school teacher, she made it very important that we learn, you know, who our family was and what branch was from where. And I can remember being very young, probably 5 or 6, and us going to these different Southern churches with graveyards on the ground and walking with her through these graveyards as she pointed out extended family members, and then always had a story, to tell about that. And the now that would be, I can't remember it then. I remember flashes and snapshots of it, you know, but that would be so important to me now because, you know, I'm older. Don't mean much to you when you're 6 years old. And the only thing that means anything to you is when when am I getting out of this graveyard? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Where are we going for lunch?
Where's the chicken coming from? But she always made it a point to, you know, when she was telling a story, when she was relaying something, to kind of paint a picture of the character that was from your family that had something to do with the story that she was telling. And, you know, I really wished, you know, that I had been a little older when we were doing that, because I really think that those kind of things would matter a lot more to me.
I remember similarly every time we were Southerners spend an inordinate amount of time in graveyards. I don't know what it is. Because I have similar memories of being a child, being at graveyards and listening to the stories of the different people that were there of distant relation. And it is, I don't know if it's one of those like weird Appalachian Southern type traditions.
That is something to do with it too. I mean, we're very respectful of our past family members. Like I don't go to Huntsville. Anytime I go to Huntsville, I go to visit my mom and dad, right? That's a point, right? And I'll go out there and I'll speak to them, right? And that's not something that I learned. That's something that was demonstrated to me as I was growing up. And I think part of it has to do with the Appalachian culture, the culture, you know, that permeated through northern and central Alabama, where my family grew up. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's, you know, there's a saying that the past is the past everywhere but the South. You know, it's never the past in the South. We hold on to everything, right? And I think visiting these many memorials that we've erected to these people is our way of keeping them close to us.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's why we do it. You know, I mean.
And I think there's this like memento mori, like remember death element to it of like, hey, one day, like you're going to have a spot and people are going to come visit you.
Yeah.
What stories are going to be told about you? You know, are you ready to go at any point in time? Because it can happen.
We got no guarantees, man.
Exactly.
It's written someplace when we're going to go. This is just what I believe. You know, it's written someplace when we're going to go. And when our time's up, our time's up. I don't care if we're in a combat zone. I don't care if we're jumping out of an airplane. I don't care if we're stepping off the curb, walking across the street. I don't care if we're laying in the bed. When the number comes, right? And you're gone. That's just my belief. I'm not asking you to agree with that. I'm just telling you, you know, another thing that allowed me to do what I did for 28 years and not dwell on the possibilities of what could happen, you know, because I believe I have a little bit of faith, and I believe that, you know, when it's your time, regardless of what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, we learn, you know, the Catholic faith, because my husband and I are converting to Catholicism.
Yeah, we got to talk about this now.
Okay.
We got to talk about this. So, and we'll probably get into a little bit of this going forward, but the young woman that's sitting here beside me is not the young woman that decided to join the Army and that joined the Army and that went to West Point. I think having my grandson has really changed the way you see the world.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's better or it's worse. I like it better, but it's changed the way you see the world. And she and my son-in-law Jordan have chosen to embrace the Catholic faith and go through the requirements to join the Catholic Church. I'm extremely happy. I'm extremely proud that you guys are going through that. I will tell you that, you know, one of my duty assignments while I was in the Army was in Italy, and I was within a hair lash of doing the same thing, or an eyelash, a hair lash. I was within an eyelash of doing the same thing when I was over there. I was
You're
overwhelmed.
just surrounded by it.
Yeah, every day, you know, and, you know, it's such a big part of that culture over there. And, you know, it's in your face every day. And, you know, there's a lot of Catholic beliefs that I can wrap my head around that I think are very positive, you know, but again, I'm super happy for you and Jordan. And
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us what got you there?
Yeah. So, raised loosely Protestant, non-denominational. So sometimes we would go to church, sometimes we wouldn't. It just kind of depended. We moved a lot. That was a big part of it. And every time I was in church, I just kind of felt like I was an imposter. I was a fraud. Like I was faking it. I was not bought in. And I tried everything to get there. I even went on like a mission trip to Costa Rica when I was 17. I really, hold on.
He's stuck on the stool. I'm sure this will all get edited out, but highlight of my day right here. Some small measure of payback for when you were younger.
Well, I mean, there's more of them in the bag over there if you want to give him one.
No, he's got some. I brought some from home.
Oh, donut holes?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Swear to God.
Get out of my head.
Okay, so yeah, I tried to fake it till I
Fumbo. Jeez.
I even tried to fake it till I made it by going on a mission trip, hoping that would eliminate. And that was probably the closest I got to fully buying in. And then when I joined the Army, there's, when you're away from home, they're really good about putting on like some sort of Sunday service.
Yeah,
for people.
absolutely.
They did it in Ranger School. When I was in Poland, they would do it. And I would always just go to the Catholic one because like, I didn't really like the acoustic guitar, to be totally honest. Like the Protestant chaplain that would kind of bring it. It felt like a TED Talk. I just didn't, like it wasn't my thing. The Catholic service was better because I knew what to expect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
doesn't matter where in
Write
the world.
Write it down. They're all the same.
Yeah. Like, and a 1, and a 2, and we're up, and we're down.
And we're kneeling. And we're down.
You know what you're getting. You can listen to it.
And it's Pilates. I mean, you're getting a workout.
Exactly. And you can listen to it in another language, and it still feels the same. It's still a sacrifice. It's still replicating the Last Supper every single time. And so I really enjoyed that. And then, but then I would always come back to my regular life and be back up to my regular bullshit. And like, it just didn't stick. And so I meet Jordan. Jordan completely changed my life. I mean, I didn't think I wanted kids until I met Jordan. I didn't think I wanted to be, I thought I wanted to be married, had one that was like, thank God didn't work out. And then I was like, maybe this isn't for me, and then I meet him and it's just been totally life-changing. And I was thinking, to take a sidetrack, I was thinking a little bit about like why that is, and like why I used to be like a liberal, like the most annoying, like typical college educated liberal woman. That was me not that long ago.
Very left.
Yeah.
Very left.
And it's so annoying. And I was like, what is that? Like, why does that happen? And I realized back in the day, you would be in your father's house until you were in your husband's house. I'm talking way back in the day. There wasn't this in between, but we don't do that anymore. At 18, you're supposed to leave the house. Yeah. Very weird if you're getting married at 18. In terms of how nowadays. And so what are we asking women to do when they leave, their parents' house? We're asking them to step into a man's world for that period of time. I mean, the 40-hour work week, the same thing every day, that's built for men. Like men's hormonal cycles reset every 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So you feel just about the same every morning. You feel just about the same every evening. It's not that way for women, but we are putting ourselves into this world that is meant for men. And I think it should be meant for men. I think that's perfectly fine. What I'm saying is you can be a little girl when you're in your parents' household. And I don't think you get to have that woman's world until you find a husband.
I don't think the woman's world exists until the woman creates it.
Exactly.
When she finds a husband, when she is...
That's when she's allowed to build it.
Or she's... And it doesn't have to be at home,
Sure.
It could revolve around her career. But she doesn't get a world until she produces it or she builds it or she constructs it around what the priorities in her life. So I think I do share I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I'm just saying and I was very career oriented and I was fulfilled. I thought I was fulfilled. I felt fulfilled. I have never felt the level of fulfillment that I feel now being with my son every day, having like a clean house that's full of groceries, a soft landing pad for my husband, and we don't have to spend all weekend cleaning the house and running errands, which is what we used to do when we were both in the military.
Folks, I'm telling you, this is such a contrast to to the woman I knew 3 years ago.
Not that long
4
ago.
years ago, right? We all change, and I think that's what's so important, and that's one of the reasons why. I think I said it earlier. If you knew me when I was in, what you're going to hear now, and my opinions on the world and things now have evolved, and I think they should. I don't think mine have evolved as drastically and as radically, not radically, but as drastically.
Oh no, it's radical
as yours have. But you seem convinced, you seem genuine in it. I don't think this is just what you're saying because you have a husband and a house and a son now. That's your responsibility. I honestly, my gut tells me that you believe this, and your perspective and has changed, and what you want out of life has changed, and your priorities have changed. I think I noticed it honestly. I think I noticed that the first time we visited Johnny in the hospital. He's stuck around in the hospital a little longer. I think
NICU stint
than we wanted him to, right? So I got to visit him there first, and I think I first saw that change in you there, right? And I'm not saying you've never been a selfish person, but the level of caring that you exhibited towards him was so great and was so pure and was so genuine. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced from you. Again, not that you were selfish, but there was no doubt in my mind that now for sure there was something on this earth that was completely number one in your life and was so important, right? And I was able to, I felt that, in the hospital that night when we first came and saw you guys.
Yeah,
right?
that was really awesome. But yeah, so like getting back on the road to Catholicism, I'll cry if I start talking about that. So we're gonna moving right along.
Let's get back to the church, can we?
Yeah, get back to what really matters. Do we kneel on a cushion or right on the ground? No, but yeah. So I get this husband and I start building this woman's world, and I start wanting kids because I feel safe to be able to do that. I mean, it's a very different matter when I hear men say, I want to be a dad, I want to have kids. I think that's amazing. When you hear a woman be a little bit more hesitant, have some grace, okay? It's high stakes. You could die.
Yeah, completely changes you guys, right?
Yeah.
Such an impact on you physically, mentally, and emotionally, and then you guys are always 2 steps ahead of us, and you're always, what world am I bringing the kid into?
Yeah.
Can I raise this child, in a way that's important to me, with
who's
values.
on the school board, like
right.
these things are really important.
I mean, the world's a crazy place right now, and if you're not thinking about that as you're getting ready to start a family, and if you don't have a plan on how you want that to go, you may want to think about that, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's a crazy place out there. Right
it
now.
has to be deliberate. It's another one of those series of choices you make
for sure.
every single day.
Sure.
And so, when Johnny came into my life, I was like, there's no way this is an accident. Like, I was completely convinced, even just being pregnant, I'm like, I am not even actively participating in this. Like, this is just happening to me. And then I had my son, and every time I looked in his eyes, I saw God, and I just could not deny it anymore, but I wasn't really sure how to dip my toe into it.
Yeah.
And so I just started waking up at 5 a.m. and reading the Bible. And it was a Protestant Bible that I was reading at the time. I didn't even know the difference, but it was good enough. And, so I was connecting in that way. I was just reading, the Bible in a year, like one of those programs. And it was great. And my life just started to change just with that little, 45 minutes, not even a Bible study every morning. I started to see things different. I started to look at people different. I felt way more at peace because, when you're a new mom, you're worried about your brain is just what's the worst possible thing that could happen right now, and am I prepared for it? It is exhausting, and just being able to, in the car driving, just ask God, like, can you just like take a little bit of this right now? And then like feeling it go away, feeling better immediately. So I was like, man, there's something to this. And so, you know, Jordan, while I was pregnant, he did ask me, like, should we go to church? Like when we have the baby? And I was like, yeah, maybe. And then we just kind of forgot about it and got swept up in being new parents. But then I kind of wanted to start going to church again. And then my mind obviously goes back to the Catholic faith because that's where I always felt the most comfortable. So I'm like, if I'm going to jump back in, and my boss, while I was in the Army while I was pregnant, he was so kind to me. You know, being an infantry officer in the 82nd and being pregnant, like a little dicey, you know, like it could go either way. He was incredibly kind to me. And I remembered that kindness. I knew that he was Catholic and went to St. Pat's. And I was like, whatever he's got, I want some of that. And so, but I put, like, there's a ton of pressure on Jordan to be the leader of our household, not just like financially and stuff like that, but I expect him to lead our family in faith in big decisions that we're making. Like, I have my woman's world that I take care of. That does not mean that there's no burden on that man, because the rucksack is heavy for that guy. And I needed him to lead the family in faith. So I knew, like, if I push him into doing what I want, I'm not going to get that leader that I need.
I get it.
You know, so I mean, prayed.
We you know, folks, we talk every morning, but, you know, the last 5 minutes hearing her explain that is honestly quite, really, it's the first time I've ever heard it. Right. And again, it draws attention to how much your priorities have changed, how much your values, I dare say your values have changed.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's, you know, I sit over here and as you say it, I pinch myself because, you know, that's how I grew up, you know, that family decisions were the family, you know, but the veto power rested with the man.
If two people are mopping, somebody's got to be in charge.
Right. You know, that's exactly right. You know, and, you know, there was open dialogue, open conversation. Plans were made, but at the end of the day, you know, it was the head of the household. And there was never any question, you know, in any of my extended family's lives, you know, where that lied. You know, and I'll be honest with you, I've been married to some very strong-willed, some strong-willed, powerful, amazing women. All right, I'm on the third one, right? Best one. No, I can't say that because they're all going to watch this.
We'll see you in the comments.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Dee. But, you know, it's, you have to be comfortable with your partner, right? And your partner has to be comfortable with you. And, you know, it seems like, you know, from the outside looking in and seeing, you know, you and Jordan interact and, you know, hearing you guys talk and seeing how you guys discuss and solve your problems, I think it's really healthy. It surprises me a little bit knowing you and knowing how strong-willed and independent that I have known you to be previously, that you're able to, I don't want to say put it aside because that's not the right way, but that you're able to work on those things with him in the manner that I see you do it. So I think that's really, you know, it's eye-opening. Like I said, it's the first time I heard all of that. And
yeah, I think women cool. Like, you know, when they think about getting married, or maybe some liberal-minded women who are who I was 5 years ago, when they're hesitant to get married and start a family, they're like, well, you know, men today, they're not the same. They don't lead. They don't make decisions, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, maybe we're not giving them room to do that, because when when they do that, we call it toxic. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yep. And so, am I a strong woman? Yes. Am I capable of being a leader? Absolutely. I have been. What's more important to me is that my son and my grandchildren know this man as a titan, as the guy who's leading the family, who's making the decisions. I don't want them to remember Jordan as the dude who just sat in the back and went along with everything.
Right.
Like, that's,
you see that sometimes.
They deserve, like, Johnny deserves a dad who's like, a dad, like really out there doing it. And so my job is he's created a space for me to be the best mother that I know how to be. I need to create a space for him to be a good husband and a good father and, the leader of our family. So yeah, that does mean sometimes like stepping back and just kind of playing the long game and being like, look, I can get what I want now, but it's not going to be what I want in 15 years.
Absolutely.
So when I was dealing with this problem of like, it wasn't a problem, but like, how do I approach Jordan about this? Because I didn't know where he was at. I was just reading the Bible by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just prayed. And I was like, you know what? The only way this is going to work is if I am the best wife and mom that I can be. He's going to get curious about what is going on with me.
What's changed?
Yeah, like if I'm just, so gracious, forgiving, just really hardworking on the family, I think it'll spark some curiosity. And I prayed about it, and I was like, I just prayed that he would see Jesus through me, through my love. And lo and behold, a few weeks later,
light bulb go off.
We started talking about faith, and I admitted to him, like I'd been keeping this a secret. I admitted to him, like, hey, when I wake up in the morning, I'm reading the Bible. And I've been doing that for a few months. And he's like, really? And so we started really talking about stuff. He was raised Methodist, so he kind of was leaning towards the Methodist church. And I wanted us to go to the Catholic church. So I said, can we just try the Catholic one? Because we knew where the Methodist church was downtown.
Mm-hmm.
That was an easy one. He knew that was familiar. Catholic wasn't super familiar. Even though I had done a couple Catholic services in the Army, I'd never really done it. And so we went to St. Pat's on Easter, which is like Catholic Super Bowl. I mean, the Met Gala
that is the big
of
day.
The South.
It was the big day.
It's wonderful. And yeah, and so we just really found, like a home there. And there's a lot of, he calls them paywalls to get into the Catholic faith. You can go to Catholic Mass.
Mm-hmm.
You can do, it's recommended that you don't take part in the Eucharist, or that's what the Catholics call communion,
mm-hmm.
Because, the Eucharist is the real body and blood of Christ. And if you're not right with God, if you're not fully in God's grace in that moment, you will bring judgment upon yourself if you go up there and partake. So even if you're fully Catholic and you got in a fight with your spouse on the way to church, didn't have time to go to confession, probably best to just hang out in the pew.
Let that one slide by.
Yeah, so like that's why you go to confession, so you can get right, and then you can participate in the Eucharist. But so there's that paywall. Then there's the OCIA paywall, which runs from September through Easter, where you're really discerning if this is what you want to do. And I don't know of a Protestant church that does that.
I don't think so.
That says, you're not in yet. We're going to put all of our laundry on the table.
Yeah. We're going to educate you first.
Yeah. And so not so that we can educate you because you're stupid.
No.
But so that you can truly decide if this is for you.
If this is what's going to be for you.
And I love that transparency, and it's a little bit of paywall, but like the world is just in everything. Like it's coming through your TV. There's ads all over the place. You got your phone in your hand all over. Mm-hmm. Like all the bad news of 8 billion people is just in your hand every day, and it's like a lot.
It can be.
And kind of we don't know what our values are anymore, what our standards are. They're constantly being pushed and prodded on, especially in this country, especially in the Western world. What do we believe?
Mm-hmm.
The Catholic faith is very clear in that, and it's really nice. It's one place where I don't think too much of the world has crept in. Like they've been pretty rigid for 2,000 years, and so that is really good. And so, while Jordan wasn't super excited about the paywalls, it was like, are they leaving us out? Do they not want us there? And I was like, well, I don't think that's it. And then we started OCIA, and he's just been on fire. Like he's just completely bought in. And he's actually said like, and they call Methodist and like Lutheranism like the gateway drugs to Catholicism, actually. And he's like, I understand why they say that. I'm glad we didn't do that. I'm glad we, stuck with the Catholic faith. He's also a huge history buff.
Right.
So like having
I think that's
history,
what really was so enticing to me, and what drew me so close to going ahead and doing it when I was in Italy was the history that was tied to it. Right. So I understand where he's coming from, and that desire through that channel.
So with that, I don't know how long we've been going,
It's a
but
hot minute.
we've lost a battery bar on the camera. So if that's any indication.
Dun, dun, dun. You're gonna have a lot of editing to do
I know.
because I think we're way over time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that time that we have. Caveating off of faith, what should we be praying about this week?
This week,
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that that's a personal thing. You know, what is it that's going on that you're extremely thankful for in your life? You know, because I think sometimes, and this is just coming from me. I think sometimes we tend to pray about the things that we don't feel fulfilled in, the things that we don't have, the things that aren't going right for
what
us,
we're scared about.
and and then sometimes we forget, you know, to thank our Creator or, you know, our deity for the things that are going right, you know, and not just the big things, but the small things, right?
Yeah.
You know, thank when you're praying, you know, thank whatever it is you believe in, whoever it is you believe in, you know. I'm trying to be inclusive.
It's Jesus.
yeah. Well, I mean, here it is, right? pray, and you know, remember those things and thank Him for those things, and then, you know, so you know, I read something the other day that I thought was kind of profound. It's weird that you brought this up, and I can kind of pull this in here. You know, when you're carrying a load, you know, I think it's important not to pray to God to lighten your load, but pray to God to give you broader shoulders.
Yep.
You know, so you can move that load.
We used to pray just that same thing in Ranger School. Don't lighten my load, just make me strong enough to carry
absolutely.
it.
And, you know, I forgot where I read that or where I saw it, you know, but that, you know, that spoke to me a little bit. You know, don't ask for your load to be lightened. Ask for your ability to move your load to be enhanced.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really important.
Well, you heard it here first. That's what we're praying about. We're going to be thankful to all the good things that we've got going on. We're going to make sure that we say thank you for that. And then anything that's a rock in the rucksack, we're going to pray that we're strong enough to carry it.
Yeah, that we can move it.
Exactly. And we're lucky to have a really great relationship and a strong family. Not everybody has that. If you don't have that at home, you're more than welcome to join us here on the I Reckon podcast. Christ is King. See you guys next time.
I reckon.